Welcome to the next panel in Culture and Sports Leadership Summit. This panel is called Seeing the System of High Performance Sport. And today I am joined by several amazing leaders from our Canadian sports system who all play a role in both understanding the sports system, influencing the sports system, all in the name of positive change and all in the name of building healthy, high-performing cultures. I thought I'd kick us off by doing an introduction of who I am and what has brought me here. Lovely to meet everyone joining in. My name is Megan Liu. I am based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I woke up to a ton of snow today, so that the stereotypes are true. Canada is cold and that there is lots of snow. I am the CEO and founder of Strad Consulting. We are a consulting firm that has partnered with Bob, Jeremy, and others to bring you today this leadership summit. It has been a true honor getting to know Jeremy over the past several years, hearing his story and hearing the courageous work he's doing to bring positive change to our sports system. Today, we are going to continue to pull on these threads. The opening panel today did a wonderful job of, call it, painting the issues. We need to protect athlete safety. We need to think about safe sport. We need to build sport over a longer horizon. Bob and others did a wonderful job of pulling out, why that is so critical now and how might we build new legal standards in order to think about not only reacting, but responding in a more proactive way. And now we enter into this wonderful group who are going to storytell around a few things. One, how they have intervened in the system that they're in, how they have led significant change in order to create a more healthy, high-performing culture, and what that means to them as a leader, as a visionary, in the good days, in the bad days. What are some lessons along the way? Okay, so culture panel team, I will get us going with some introductions. Maybe what I can do is ask you all to share who you are, where you're located, what role you play, and lastly, what's brought you in to your leadership journey today? What's your big why? Laura, can you warm us up today? Can I toss to you first?
Sure, thanks, Megan. My name is Laura Watson. I work with Own the Podium, leading a program named Pursuit. I'm coming to you from very rainy Vancouver today, so Megan's snow did not freeze on this side of the mountains, but that's pretty typical. The Pursuit program has existed since 2017, and our purpose is to support and enhance Canada's high-performance coaches and technical leaders in Olympic and Paralympic sport. So as opposed to the system in Canada, we have our coaching education system we're incredibly proud of as the National Coaching Certification Program, which is the education side. We focus more on the development side of our high-performance coaches and leaders, really doing what they do for athletes and trying to make them better.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, Dr. Andy, tell us who you are.
Well, hello, everyone. And my name is Andy Van Utgem, and I come from Victoria, Vancouver Island, so just across the water from Seattle and across the water from Vancouver. And I am the Vice President of Performance Sciences Research and Innovation with On the Podium as well, same organization that Laura works with. And one of my projects that I'm responsible for is a culture of excellence. So again, much of my experience in conversation today will be coming from the perspective of culture of excellence. And this is a really important project for On the Podium. It's looking at the intersectionality between performance and between people. On the Podium is the technical agency for high performance sport in Canada. So this is incredibly important for us as we support our national sports here in Canada. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Welcome. Sue.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sue Hyland, and I'm in Ottawa, Canada. My role, I'm a Senior Director of Recreation Varsity Sports for the University of Ottawa, probably equivalent of an athletics director for another title that people do use. Megan, why I'm here, I've certainly had a passion for sport all my life. I've worked in it all my life. certainly at the community level, as a parent, as a volunteer, as a coach, but then as an administrator through numerous years with the Canadian Olympic Committee, Canada Games, Canadian Women in Sport, now where I'm at as the athletic director at the University of Ottawa. And so I think, you know, my passion still exists. I wake up every day loving what I do. And at the core of what we do, I mean, certainly at the university level, is we're trying to grow youth and have them become better citizens by the time they leave university than when they started. And that is our job. And there's a lot of things that that go around that, so that I know we'll talk to a little bit later. But yeah.
Sue, thank you. Welcome. Last but not least, Nathan, maybe you can tell us where you're calling in from and your backdrop tonight.
Sure. Good evening. Evening for me, everyone. Hi, Nathan Bombries. I'm Chief Executive Officer at Rugby Canada. Joining you today from Paris. There's been a Rugby World Cup going on over the last 6-7 weeks. Unfortunately, the Canadian national team is not here for the first time, but I'm here. We've had some important meetings with World Rugby and the other unions today, and some news has come out. We've actually long overdue. They just announced a new competition for Canada's men's national team to play in, which is long overdue and welcome news. I think our purpose is really to inspire the nation through Canada on getting Canada back on the high performance stage. Our women are one of the best teams in the world, and our men, we want to get back to where we were and get right back up there. So that's what keeps me going and keeps me inspired. And I just believe in the power of sport and the power of my sport, which is rugby. I don't think any sport brings people together, drives them to collaborate as teammates, quite like rugby. So yeah, looking forward to talking to you this evening.
Thank you, Nathan, and we really appreciate you fitting this in and amongst your important work. Okay, well, hopefully all can now understand the excitement I have to bring together these panelists and essentially an insight or a landmark into the Canadian sports system in terms of each one of you representing an angle, a perspective, a lens in growing this amazing community that we get to call home. So maybe the first question, Andy, I'm going to turn to you. So this is my early warm up to you. My first question to you is, what does a culture of excellence mean for Own the Podium? What are you trying to do, from your vantage point in creating a healthy sports system?
Great, and thank you for using the term culture of excellence. That's a phrase we've been using here in Canada for a number of years and trying to probably understand what we mean by that particular phrase. And again, there's lots of conversation around culture of excellence. There are two key words there, obviously, culture and excellence. And as we reflect upon those two key words, for me, the algorithm is pretty simple. Culture of excellence equals people add performance. If we just focus on one aspect, such as performance, then you start hearing these typical sayings such as win at all costs. And of course, if you focus too much on people, then you start losing that essence of winning, which at the Olympic and Paralympic level is certainly one of the objectives, is to excel, to potentially win, to do your best. And so again, that algorithm of people plus performance is certainly very, very important as we try to understand culture of excellence. That's the easy part. The hard part is how do you put those two together? What's the intersectionality between those two? We often use, and certainly in my mind, there's the shine model, whereas what's above the iceberg, what's below. So again, we have a lot of effort both in the United States and Canada, around the world, where we put together cultural artifacts, we put policies together, we engage in training. So a lot of things happen above the iceberg, above the water line. So what happens below? And that's where the hard work is as well. How do we shape behaviors? How do we grow and build a culture in which people value each other, but also value performance, and try to strike that balance, knowing that we're just trying to be better people. When we're trying to do well, we're trying to inspire, and we're trying to grow a next generation of talented people. and just being comfortable with performance as well as valuing each other.
Great. Andy, how long has the Culture of Excellence program been going on for?
Well, behind the scenes, we've been working on it since probably 2019 with a number of different think tanks, certainly a number of people coming together, looking at research, equally looking at our practices. But On the Podium has initiated a number of different projects, such as an integrated wellness plan, but certainly a project that we call Culture of Excellence Project. Started last year in October. We work with our national sport organizations. We call them NSOs. We've been working with NSOs, partnering with them, providing them tools and strategies and support to have a deep dive into their own culture. And it's something that we want them to embrace. It's not because On the Podium saying you must do it. It certainly is just there to support them. We're trying to create an environment, a safe environment for people to have authentic conversations about what does culture mean to you? How can you leverage it as a performance factor? And how can you leverage to value the people in your organization?
Great. Yeah, wonderful backdrop. Nathan, I wonder about you next. If I sort of juxtaposition to that NSO, what does high performance mean to you? What does high performance mean to rugby? And why is culture important in that?
High performance, I think, is really simple. It's getting the best players and coaches together to have the best possible training and preparation to perform at the highest level. And so it's, how often can we get, can you get your best players together with that quality coaching to do that training? In the Canadian context and kind of where we are, sometimes not as often as you'd like, or not as often as you should. And so we're constantly working to create more of those opportunities for our people to get together and be able to do that. I think in terms of culture, I mean, rugby is a team sport. It's an ultimate team sport. And you need to be able to trust each other, trust your teammates to do their job. You can spend a lot of time in that team environment with your teammates, and having a good culture where you roll up your sleeves, you work, you trust your teammates to carry their work in training, carry on their work in outside of training, and just being a good colleague and a teammate. Frankly, it makes it more enjoyable if you go to work, and even in sport, if you go to work and you don't have to be the best of friends, but if you can get along and push and pull each other and get the most out of each other, then it's going to be a more enjoyable experience to work together.
Yeah, great. Nathan, we're going to come back and spend some time kind of unpacking how you've gotten there, where you're headed later on, but I want to keep going here. Thank you. Sue, talk to us. What does the GG's program look like? What does Ottawa U look like? Paint the landscape of the system you're in from a varsity perspective in Canada.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, we are, it's, and I listened to some of the speakers earlier too, who also kind of came from numerous ones from the academic setting. But I mean, we are in an academic setting, delivering what we believe are pretty competitive sport programs. The kids want to have this integrated support mechanism around them. So we do provide that in the sport side of things, and it includes the academic sport and the academic side, success and mentoring in that area, strength and conditioning, mental performance, mental health, nutrition performance. We try to have a coach development area, as well as, we're still lots of work around research and innovation in the work we do. So we kind of, the student is at the core of what we do, and we have these pillars around them, trying to help them in their sport world. But it's combined with the fact that they are students. And I remember Lee said it at the very beginning, they're students first, right? And actually, a high percentage of our kids are actually quite talented academically. So we combine the academics, we give them support there, we provide them what the tools they want to perform on the field. And then we also make sure they understand that giving in the community is a big piece of their success and becoming better citizens when they leave. So those are things we do. And to key off Nathan a little bit here, and Andy, you know, at the same time, we use the same thing. We want a positive culture in everything we do. And why? You know, to your point, Nathan, it feels good. Positive culture feels good, right? We just came out of an athlete orientation early September, and that was exactly the discussion. What was the GG culture we want in a safe and positive, safe sport, positive culture also? And the first thing we dealt with, what does it look like? Boy, when you look at what positive culture looks like, it feels really good. So we kind of keyed off that, then we described it, and then we said it, in the end of the day, how do you sustain culture? You do it with good leadership as a student, good leadership, doing your academics, commitment to the community, engagement and give back, care for one another. Andy, I think you've raised that for sure. And then the notion that you have to have these positive behaviors all the time and hold each other accountable. So that's hopefully that at the core of it is, this is how we talk to our students.
Yeah, it's lovely, Sue, and so much I can hear Andy's iceberg analogy of, you know, how do you start at the top of the artifacts and then move to a deeper level and creating the conditions necessary for folks to be successful. Yeah, thank you. You also spoke a lot about creating leaders, and Laura, I wonder if that's, you know, a way to pick up with you and the wonderful work that you're doing at Pursuit. Can you help the audience understand the system that you're trying to create in Canada and you know, your angle for change?
Yeah, you know, Sue said it best when she said our athletes are people first. That's really the system that we're working within. It actually has very little to do with sport. It's about helping people to be better in the space that they work in. And, you know, Andy referenced the culture of excellence work on the podium, and we've really refined it, I think, as a Canadian culture of excellence. So what does it mean to be a coach or a technical leader in the Canadian high performance sports system in Canada? And for us, that's really grounded in self-awareness. So it's recognizing the better you understand who you are, how you perform, how you show up, maybe what sometimes your limitations and barriers are, the better you can relate with others and take care of the people around you. And so we've been incredibly fortunate in the work that we do in Pursuit, that we have the support of the 5 major sporting organizations in Canada in the multi-sport space. So the Canadian Olympic Committee, Canadian Paralympic Committee, Own the Podium, Sport Canada, and the Coaching Association of Canada. And that's created a unique space where we're able to support all of the coaches and leaders that we work with, and really diving into just what do they need to be better. Coaching is well, if we heard the last panel, a very overwhelmingly scary place at times. Unfortunately, we heard a lot of the bad side, I think, of coaching, but we also recognize there's a lot of great parts of coaching. And because it is so all encompassing, we actually, research has shown that coaching has burnout and turnover rates similar to that of first responders and military personnel, which just really isn't acceptable in my mind, because it's an incredible space to work. And so we're really trying to figure out how to take care of these great people who are doing such an incredible job. We have amazing technical coaches and leaders, as we do in all nations, and give them a better space to work in and let them work together.
Great. Okay, thank you all. Nathan, I'd love to come back to you, and maybe the invitation, Sue, here to help us tell the story of what Nathan walked into X number of months ago. Nathan, I'm going to take you back to the day you said yes to becoming CEO of Rugby Canada. Can you help us understand what that looked like? What was your system that you entered into? What were you addressing? What were some of the issues at play?
Well, the organization, the men's national team failed to qualify for the World Cup for the first time. Canada's a proud rugby nation, and that was painful. There had just been a high performance review published, looking back at some challenges, some real cultural, systemic, challenges that the organization had been through. And it was in fact, I was phoned 2 or 3 days before I interviewed for the role and said, look, this report's going to come out. We'd like to send it to you. Basically, do you still want to interview? I think was what they asked me. And look, it's it was pretty clear and pretty forthright stuff. But it was also an acknowledgement. You could see that the board recognized that things needed to change. They had, some things that happened in the past, and they needed to change. And when I came in, when I spoke about, some of my experiences in the past and the way I like to approach things, I wanted to look forward. And I said, look, I plan to look ahead and look forward and look towards where we're going to take the organization. I think you've certainly shined a light on what's happened in the past. And I think I found, as I got into the organization, I found a lot of people that also recognized that maybe some of the conduct or some of the things that happened in the past weren't the way they wanted to move forward. You still found a lot of good people, and they were looking for a way forward, and a way to get forward and improve. And you gotta bring some of that stuff to the surface and get it out there, look at it, and show it to people, and be able to talk about it and say, what are these issues, what are these challenges, right? Now, how does this help us? What have we learned from it? What are we going to do? And how do we take this thing forward? And if the approach so far, and we have a long way to go, but the approach so far is just to be, how do we create that environment where you can be open, a lot of contact and communication. We can give each other feedback, we can receive feedback. That's a positive thing, that's a helpful thing, and create this environment where we're looking ahead, right? How does that help us get better, right? We lost last week. How does this feedback help us get better? And it's an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sue, you were there. I just want to slow down and sort of unpack a bit of what you just referenced in terms of the high performance review and the board getting involved. Do you want to just story tell a bit in terms of, from your seat, what the board did, how they led it, and where we ended up?
Yeah, it was, so there was, the governance model had a review group, and then separate to that, they had a technical group. And I found, that, to key off from, again, Nathan, there was a real will to try to build a path forward for rugby, given some of the situations that you've described. There was a timeline that we had. This wasn't going to take 18 months. This was going to be done within a certain time frame. There was a really clear process set out, very clear, in an appropriate governance model that had the due diligence that was needed, that had the rigor that was needed for something as important as this, and then as this, and then the engagement part. I felt that we were going to the right people at the right time and in the right way. Mm-hmm. And all of those things came together, I think, with regular meetings that we had that made sure we talked difficult conversations about what is the best way to deal with this particular situation with this. So it was really fun in the way that it was set up in a very, and it was always, protecting privacy, ensuring there was this independent analysis of everything, truly independent, that could go forward to the rugby board and then move on with where they wanted to go. And I think they've done that. Okay. So it was, I was asked to participate in it, and thoroughly enjoyed how it was set up and the rigor that was put into the whole process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Sue. Nathan, you sit as CEO on top of this organization. You're learning the Canadian backdrop. You have more than the pressures of getting players on the field and winning. You also have the business of rugby and the need to financially, create a financially stable model. Talk to us about, that trade-off, those pressure points. How does that impact you?
Yeah, I think that has a direct impact on culture. Sports people at the elite level in particular, they want to practice their sport. They want to be supported to get the most out of themselves and get the most out of their teammate. They want to be supported to make the most out of their sporting, their talent they've been given, and the opportunity and the hard work that they put in over years and years and years. And they want their organizations to be able to support them. So when an they're willing to, I find they're willing to be realistic. If an organization, has challenges with its capacity to support them, but they want to be supported and they want to see the organizations pushing just as hard as they're pushing to give them that platform to perform at their best. And when that doesn't happen, it can cause a lot of frustration and cause a lot of issues. And in the instance of Rugby Canada, there was a lot of kind of hoarding of resources, I think, and people unwilling to collaborate because they felt that they had to protect scarce resources to enhance their program. Our task now is to drive that collaboration and say that's not going to take us forward. We need to work together, and then actually by sharing the knowledge and sharing some of the resources, we can get more out of them and bring more benefit to our players. And in rugby, we have rugby's 15 on 15 rugby, but there's a variation called sevens, which is played in the Olympics, and in the Canadian system that gets that Olympic variation gets some specific funding and support, which is great. But we've kind of looked at it and said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you're good enough and you're able, you could play in a World Cup and an Olympic Games? Wouldn't that be a great thing for our rugby players to be able to achieve or aspire to? And so we tried to, maybe it wasn't seen through that lens previously, but we've worked really hard to start to do that. And now we're seeing players playing in both codes, playing 15s and representing Canada at World Cups and in international matches, and then going to play sevens. But a big part of that is we have to put the financial stability beneath that, and that's challenging as we come out of a pandemic. I say we've been in hibernation for a couple of years. Last year was a bit of a wake up year, and now all of a sudden we're hitting a lot of activity, which is great. But we need the commercial and the financial drivers to be able to fulfill the activity. So I think we're not alone in this. A lot of sports are really having to now play catch up on the financial side to make sure we can support our players and our coaches and our staff to compete at that highest level, which is their aspiration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Nathan. More complexity in the system. Andy, you're listening to this. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts to building, to supporting a CEO like Nathan, building a high performance culture?
Yeah, and it's been fantastic listening to the other panel members, and I'm picking up on Nathan and certainly Stu. What strikes me is this resilient culture. So again, looking at Rugby Canada and looking forward with some of the work that Nathan's embarking upon, key words that I heard from him is the collaboration, being innovative, being adaptive, future ready. These to me are the hallmarks of being a resilient culture. And again, I think On the Podium is here to work with the NSOs to support them. There's a financial aspect to our mandate of On the Podium as well, making funding recommendations to the Government of Canada, but also as a technical agency is working in support of Nathan and Rugby Canada as an example to look at their culture, to help them understand their culture and build this resilient culture, which I'm hearing some of those key words already from both Sue and from Nathan. So yeah, so very exciting to hear some of the accounts of Rugby Canada.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. Laura, maybe we go there. What is the Pursuit program doing in order to build resilient, innovative leaders that are feeding these systems?
And before I jump into that one, I kind of just want to build on something Nathan said in terms of he spoke about an open environment, and I think it's more than that they're starting to create is this idea of a safe space, and it's a term that I think it goes alongside safe sport now that we're sort of seeing it thrown around a lot, and our understanding of it varies depending on the application. But what rugby is looking at and has created is the ability for people to be more honest and open, and so to feel comfortable saying what they maybe weren't comfortable saying before, or behind closed doors they felt a certain way and weren't okay to bring forward. And I think that's something that is being embraced in this culture of excellence piece, the awareness that it's okay to say when things aren't okay, or to understand how you perform your best and how you show up your best. So it's one of the things, not only rugby, but we're seeing in most of the NSOs, I think, as we move forward, which is really good. In the Pursuit program itself, one of the things that we do is, I mentioned before, really dig into who people are as leaders and as coaches, and how they show up first as a person before anything else. And so we get to do that in really unique ways. That partnership I referenced is part of the reason we're able to do what we do. We have some work in a space that we call leading up, out, down, and in. So the concept that no matter what role you're in, you have an opportunity to lead the people around you. And that sometimes for a coach can be very obvious when it comes to leading an athlete. But when it comes to leading someone like their high performance director or a CEO above them, or a board of directors, say, who maybe operates outside of them, is the idea of how they can influence and create a safer space by having a say in that area as well. We do it in creative ways. We are able to actually run a program where we hire professional actors who come in and role play conflict scenarios, and that safe space is what allows people to really show up well in that environment. So obviously with professional actors, a scenario would be staged and defined ahead of time, so the actors are acting, but for the coaches and leaders who go through the program, it's incredibly real. And they do it in a way that they're able to show up and take outs and be able to say, you know what, I need to do over on this, I need to retry this, or hey, can I pause and ask someone and ask for some support in it. And it's ways that we don't think we can do that in real life, but if you create the right environment where people can excel and support each other and work closely together, we can start to implement some of those strategies. You know, whether you're coaching, whether you're on the pitch, whether you're in a meeting, whether you're just in a conversation one-on-one with someone else to say, hey, I need a do-over, maybe can I step back? You know, I'd like to pause and come back to this conversation. So that safe space is incredibly important to us. It's probably a foundational piece of what we do. And we're constantly working to redefine what that looks like. And part of that comes from just asking the people who are in our programming. So it excels because of the feedback and the continuous improvement that exists because of people who go through it, that they'll say, hey, that activity we just did was really good, or hey, here's a way you could do it better next time. But that space is created with all of us being able to work together to continually make it better in the pursuit of excellence.
Yeah, great. Laura, you and I have had the opportunity of working together for lots of years now, and I've had the privilege of seeing your program have significant impact. I think what might be interesting for the audience to understand is how each one of your coaches, your high performance directors starts. Can you maybe share a bit around that assessment, that self-awareness phase? Because leadership journeys are difficult, and the first few steps matter. So do you mind just stepping into that?
Yeah, for sure. So we do, I mentioned before, our focus on self-awareness and just understanding yourself better. And we do that in a couple of different ways. And a foundational piece that Megan's referring to is our assessment program. We use a number of assessment tools. It can be just a basic stop, start, continue, gathering feedback from people around you. We work closely with the Leadership Circle 360 program, which is a 360 assessment, relatively invasive in terms of it is a 360, so it's a higher risk profile program. But we do it in a very careful way where a coach or leader coming into Pursuit will go through a 360 assessment. So the opportunity to gather feedback from themselves as a self-assessment, as well as those around them, from people that they identify they want to get the feedback from. And we work with a consultant group called Executive Science, and we have two outstanding consultants who provide one-on-one debriefs to those people in that space. So for those who've been through 360s before, you may know it can be a very risky and sometimes very scary process to go through. But the ability of these consultants to really work through someone to understand their results and their assessment and be able to apply them is the key that we have found success with the programming, as opposed to having somebody go through a process and then try and interpret what those results mean and what they look like. The other benefit of this program is we're not doing it to show people where their gaps are and what all their problems are that they need to fix. The program is really designed so that we're able to say, here's a roadmap of who you are, and here's who you show up, and let's figure out how you got to here and where you want to go. And maybe there's opportunities for development, and maybe down the road where we take some other opportunities we don't see right now. So between the 360 and then self-awareness programs, which we've used tools such as Principles U, which is a free online tool, highly recommend just digging into it a little bit. It's a fun tool to use too, very low risk. It gives people a better understanding of who they are and how they show up and how they work with the people around them.
Yeah, great. Leading self at the beginning of that model. So appreciate it. Andy, I have marveled at the impact you have and continue to make on the para programs in our country. And I'm just wondering if there's anything unique, anything special you have learned or are paying attention to in terms of stewarding a culture of excellence within para.
Oh, that's a very big area to discuss. Yes, the Paralympic world is a very unique culture. It certainly, from my perspective, both as somebody who has worked in the high performance world for Paralympic sport, but also maybe taken an academic lens, I think the Paralympic athlete obviously has the same desire to win well, but their starting point may have been slightly different. And again, their context is different. Again, looking at some of the opportunities that they have, certainly, again, looking at it from the perspective is that many of them come from the medical world. They're coming in from just an acquired injury or coming from a world where they have a congenital disorder. There's a certain world for them, which we would consider a medical world. Sometimes that clashes as a subculture almost against a performance world, and trying to navigate being a performance orientated as well as coming from the medical world, which is sometimes occupied by doctors and various other medical personnel. So again, in my role, I used to work for the Wheelchair Rugby Canada. And I often notice that there's this transition from the medical world into the performance world. And that's, again, two competing cultures, and how do you, or subcultures, and how do you navigate that carefully, navigating in a way that allows them to be comfortable to know what does the world of performance look like for them, as well as understanding the context by which they're coming. So I see that as a very interesting dynamics for para sport, for para athletes. And I'm always intrigued and incredibly honored to be part of their stories, sometimes listening to their stories about how they navigate that. Yeah, so a little bit of subculture work between these in the Paralympic world that I find very fascinating.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Subcultures, important. Sue, maybe with that thread going to you next, once you build, I can see you want to jump in.
You know what, I just wanted, when you talked about, Andy, just quickly, I mean, I've certainly watched through my many years in sport, the profile and visibility around our Paralympians, and it is quite amazing where it's come from to where it is today. And I think it's wonderful. And it's probably a piece in the university system that we haven't tapped into it like we should, okay, in our programming. So I certainly feel we're a little bit behind there. But Meg, I just wanted to talk, you talked about the complexity of the system. And I don't know how others feel, but certainly in our world with young kids who are coming out of high school and they're eager to learn and they're eager to be a part of things, like other things that have become complex in our world in the university is the whole social injustice issues. Right. How we apply, how we intentionally really work on equity, diversity, inclusion in a positive way. So it has really been complex for us, okay, to weave through that. And sport does such a good job of amplifying social injustice issues just by the nature of who we are and how we can do that and garner attention around that. And then the other thing is obviously, and I get that it's coming out in the news in the national level around safe sport. We've talked about that. The other sessions talked about that too, but it is absolutely trickling into our world in the university setting. I mean, we certainly at U Ottawa have the kids go through training. So we go through anti-racism training. We go through and more. We're putting more into play, and around the safe sport, we're absolutely going through various trainings, working with ITP Sport, a good organization, trying to build our own code of conduct within our university for sport, and then trying, we're not there yet, but really working to educate those in the university that need to be educated around this on why we have to lead our own independent process within the university setting around sport issues. And so we're actually trying to make this happen now. We're not there, we've got some work to do, but we have to try to do that. So there's a whole bunch of things we're doing there on safe sport in the academic setting now that, again, it's complicated, the whole piece. It creates more complexity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that in, Sue. Sue, as you think forward, I can imagine, I'm a mom, I have 2 children. I can imagine, I see the pressures on social media, the pressures on, just access to information that they have that maybe generations of the past didn't. Talk to us about, the other complexities, DE&I, social media. What are you seeing on the horizon that you might be needing to think differently about in terms of your sport programming?
Well, certainly, there's another complexity, right? Is the young kids coming in to do sport now, or kids in general, they do love the social media vehicles, right? This is really something they feel is important, and they evaluate us on. How are we doing in this area? So it is a critical piece. Wow, as a mom too, I mean, so we are constantly doing more and more in this area, and but we have to do it in the right way in our sector, in sport, in the university setting, and we have social media policies around how we truly, when we see a kid is saying something on social media, who's an athlete on one of our teams, and they shouldn't be doing it, we will react to that, okay? Because we have to, and it's also part of our safe sport training, how you treat people, we don't want you chirping at people on social media if that's not the appropriate thing to do. That's not building the culture and the positive culture we want. So social media is a big beast too, for sure. I haven't given you the answers, but we continue to try to look at that. Again, around the social injustice issues, the EDI, we're making intentional efforts of the training that we will do with our student athletes, with our head coaches, as part of our sport review panels, through the good work of colleague many people probably know here, Roger Archambault, worked with Own the Podium. So he brought the model that we're using at the university to the high performance model and the integrated support team model to the university, as well as the sport review panel type of approach that we do with coaches at the end of the year. So we have intentionally put a sector in there around EDI and the work we've got to do in that area, the intentional efforts we want to do. So that's not a check of a box, but it takes work. Like it is absolutely not perfect at all where we're at. We got lots of work to do, but trying to weave these things into everything we do to, again, with the goal of making better citizens at the end and having coaches who are grounded in their values and can help us create those better citizens through how they coach our kids. I probably didn't quite answer everything, but
yeah, it's hard work.
It is hard work, and I, as a leader, I've used these words, and people on here have probably heard me say it, and I repeat it all the time. And we have to constantly lather, rinse, repeat at this level. The kids here wanted the next year, you got to do it again. You got to do it again, and then hopefully after 5 years, But I constantly say nobody cares what you know until they know you care. And I use those words all the time, and I really feel that is part of really building a positive culture in this complex world, right? We are trying. If they see that we're trying and we care, we can make a difference, right? And make people appreciate the work we're doing for the kids.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Care. Andy, you're jotting notes before I change course. Anything you want to add in there?
No, I'm very reflective on someone taking the notes down here. We're reflective on all the panel members' comments, and again, just looking at the safe spaces that we're creating for these conversations is what resonates with me right now, where Sue is really guiding us in some of her comments, certainly with the younger generation. And Yeah, lots of dynamics out there with social media and so forth. And again, I think we need to pause, take a breath at times, reflect, and give space for that opportunity to happen, and teach that skill. Teach that skill to the next generations about how to just pause and to take in what's around you and value the people around you.
Yeah, nice. Easier said than done at times, hey?
Indeed.
Nathan, warming up.
Megan, can I just add on to that? I think, you know, the easier said than done piece too. I think so much of this work has to be done with intention. And we get so caught up in the day-to-day of what's going on and just inundated with, you know, whatever changes, as Sue's saying, the next training program we have to take, or, you know, new technology coming out. And so to be able to set aside time to make sure that we're working with our people in a safe, supportive space is, you can't allow that to fall aside, because we just don't prioritize this otherwise. Everything else seems to take priority and precedent. So to be able to put people first it's not an easy skill to do, but I think it's something that we just all have to find time for, because it makes everything else seem to work better.
Laura, you just inspired, so I'm going to stay with you for a second. Thank you for jumping in. Laura, I have listened to you use words like, you know, helping coaches and high performance directors shift their mental model from a technical role to a leadership role. And I think that's what you're alluding to right now, in terms of, you know, you may have technical pieces on your plate, depending on the role and what you've got on the go. And, you know, you need to be able to think about yourself as a leader and, you know, build the capacity and build the skills to lead. So maybe tell us about some stories, some anecdotes, you know, some situations that have come to mind where you've seen someone or a group of coaches that you've been working with go through that transition, and maybe like, what were those aha moments for them?
Well, I can't tell too many stories, because we have a saying that what happens in pursuit stays in pursuit. You know, we talk about the safe space, but we do have people sign a confidentiality agreement. I think that's one of the pieces that allows conversations to happen the way they do. And the way we put cohorts of coaches together is to allow them to have a space where there's nobody else who they report to within the group. It's very unlikely there's somebody else from their organization. And because of that, they can talk about what they need to and dive into subjects that maybe they don't have that space to do otherwise. So I can't tell too many stories because of that. But you know, maybe for that reason exactly, we currently just launched a storytelling initiative that's called Beyond Performance, Putting People First. And I know my colleague Dave Robertson is firing some things in the chat there, so I'm going to ask him to share the link to it. But we've done this project really to show the stories of some of those high performance coaches and some of the programming behind the scenes, and just tell about how important people are and really what drives them. And one of the common threads you're going to see between the stories, and there's sort of over the next few months more videos coming out, is that it's all about people. And that's what we're seeing in all of our coaches. You know, they don't come to be an Olympic or Paralympic coach because they have a huge gap in a technical space. There's always improvements that can be made, obviously, in the technical and tactical space. We're always looking to refine, but that's usually not our gaps. By the time when somebody gets to this level of coaching, they have areas such as communication or emotional intelligence or empathy that they can work on, leadership skills, some of what we used to refer to as softer skills, but we're really seeing is what makes the small difference. So I think probably one of the unexpected success stories we see is actually when we transfer people between organizations or into other roles, that they move on to a role that they're better suited to. And, you know, I look at the panel in front of me and I know everybody has an incredible sport career behind them. I look at Sue's career and the different organizations she's worked with. And if we can create better people in the sports system who can transfer between sports organizations or roles to make sure that they're in the best suited space at that time for them in the organization, I think that's the absolute best work that we can do.
Great. Dave is helping you out, so appreciate that. Nathan, I'm going to come back to you and maybe ask you to storytell around, you know, both what you have been up to in your first year now as CEO, and maybe what the path looks like, and maybe, you know, bear with me in terms of helping the audience understand how you're leading change. What are the steps you're taking? What are you paying attention to? What's your recipe?
I don't know. I'm still cooking, but it's just
Sure.
trying to get started. I think first we had to look at you had to look at the finances of the organization, and then you had to look at we've had to take a look at, I guess, the governance and some of the basic business processes, and having qualified financial people, and having an HR person, and having people in the organization that do these kind of basic things, which we don't often talk about when we talk about sport. But you can't help your players. You can't build a stage without a foundation. You can't build something, that stage for your players to perform on if you haven't got the foundation underneath. And that's going to take time. Like we've identified kind of what rock bottom looks like, or pretty close to it, and then we're trying to build back up again, and that's going to take some time. We've just looked at we'll be launching a new strategic plan in later this year, and so we've done a lot of work around that. We've done a lot of consultation around that, kind of done it in kind of quietly, just gone about our business, put together a good group committee. We've had players or recently retired players involved in that. We've had consultation with the players as part of that. Our players have recently formed Canadian Rugby Players Association, which is with our support. We started out with an MOU, and then we've now got an agreement with the players on how we're going to partner with them. And I guess we've done a lot of work on maybe changing some of the language used. The what you say affects how you think, and that affects like some of your actions as well. So how do we want to work with the players? I very much see it a partnership with the players. We're a national sports organization. The players are part of the organization. They're I wake up every day thinking about how we can support our players and our team to perform at a higher level and to get better. And how do we care? That's something that's come through in the discussions today. Care, just taking an interest in your colleague or I call them players, or I call them colleagues. Somebody that you work with, people that you spend time with, just taking an interest, showing a bit of care. It's a very powerful tool. Care and then belief. And also saying to somebody, I believe in you. That's a very, very powerful tool as well. Mm-hmm. And also, though, sometimes you have to give people feedback. Sometimes the way they've been doing things for years and years and years is maybe not the best way to do things going forward. And sometimes you have to have some of those conversations with people. But I think they respect you more, and they get more out of it if you take the time and look them in the eye and set them down and talk them through it, and give the reasons, and give them opportunities to also give you feedback and give you some of the reasons. I think you get a lot more from that. That's very challenging to do when you've got a really broad organization, a number of teams, people spread all over frankly, all over. I've got people all over the world right now. We've got our women are in New Zealand competing in WXV. Our sevens teams are are on their way to Santiago to compete in the Pan Am Games, and our men's team are soft assembling in Victoria and Langford, getting ready to go to Spain. So we've got people spread all over the world right now. So that communication can be a real challenge at times, but you just have to keep working at it as much as you can every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Nathan, and the courage that I celebrate in you in terms of leading this strategic change and setting up the channels and being open to feedback. We talked about that in the previous panel in terms of how important that is, and I think you're demonstrating the fruits of that labor. Okay, well, turns out with this amazing group of panelists, time does go by fast. So we thought we'd turn it over to some questions. Audience, those that are on here, two ways to ask questions. First is please use your chat channel, and Saprit is going to help me monitor that. And then the second piece is obviously you can use your Zoom hand and come on in, come off mute and ask questions, and we'll pay attention to that. Maybe to get us kickstarted, Andy, this one might be for you. We'll see. I'll ask it. The first question, there's one question that is more specific, but I'll ask it. Has Own the Podium signed the Universal Code of Conduct to prevent and address maltreatment in sport?
Short answer to that is yes. And so just a little explanation to that. So whenever we work with any external partner, certainly all of the members within our own organization sign, obviously sign the Universal Code as well through their contracts of employment, but even the engagement we have with our external, whether it be board members or if we contract somebody in to be a service provider or a consultant with us, they equally would sign this, the Universal Code through our contract. So short answer is yes. Great,
thank you. Andy, you may have a double header here. There's a question in the vein of funding. How Own the Podium assigns funding, assesses funding, how funding is married up against demonstrating a culture of excellence. Do you mind just storytelling a bit around that?
Probably about another 4-hour presentation, but I'll try to be succinct here. So our funding recommendations, we do not provide the funding on the podium. We provide funding recommendations to our funding partners, which is, again, Sport Canada, Federal Government of Canada, as well as Canadian Olympic Committee. And so when we go about delivering these funding recommendations, we look at a number of different factors. And so we look at performance history, recent results, as well as a range of other different factors related to their technical preparations, their technical leadership, their competitive and training environments. So it becomes this myriad. And again, people are probably familiar with the SPLIS model. One of the things about the SPLIS model, I just read an article this morning, how it's understood that the SPLIS model may have not included culture. And so where does culture come into the SPLIS model as a factor affecting performance? And I think that's the exciting part of this, is trying to understand, how do we assess culture and how do we weight it into this dynamics of looking at all of the different factors as we start deciding things such as making a funding recommendation. So again, when we go about our business, we use a number of different instruments on the podium. We, again, look at a tiered response in terms of funding based upon, again, just a range of different factors that are assessed by our high performance advisors associated with every national team that is targeted.
Great. Great. We're scanning for, hey, Fiona, thank you. Welcome, Fiona Birch.
Unmute. So you mentioned before, it was mentioned before that, coaches and athletes, I guess both of them, can get in hot water for what they post online. And in my experience, though, what they're getting in trouble for is not what they're posting online. It's what they're doing in real life, ending up as sort of their digital DNA via somebody posting a video of what they did. Or more importantly, what they DM. I've actually had coaches tell me, oh, my kids know what not to post, but then I find out that they're DMing all sorts of things that we won't mention. So what are you doing to support that on an ongoing basis, beyond the code of conduct talk that everybody seems to give? Is there any other ongoing sort of education that you're giving to both the coaches and the athletes? Because there's often a I don't know what the right word is, but there's a lack of understanding of between those two, how they like to communicate, which is always interesting. So I'm wondering if anyone's doing anything about that positively.
Sue, Nathan, any guidance here?
I mean, it's a good question. And is it a gap in how we're trying to deal with things? I know, I mean, a couple of things. That our code of conduct, we hope to put into play here for the GGs within the university. whether we call it a code of conduct or something else so that it fits okay with where the university is going, will be grounded on the Universal Code of Conduct for Maltreatment in Sport. Okay, so whatever we do, it will be grounded on that document, of which we will amplify certain things. And I think the social media will get amplified in our code a little bit more because of what you've described. Hazing gets amplified a little bit more in our code of conduct outside of the UCCMS, just because of the importance of that in the academic setting and the history of that notion. So it's probably still a miss, but you've given us very good for thought, Fiona, on how do we close that maybe gap that you're saying.
And
we have a policy, we have a policy, but yeah.
I mean, and I'm not here to sell anything, but like, we've put together a platform, and it's frustrating that in North America, where we've taken the logistics out, we're bringing experts to talk about not just branding and social media, but how do you reduce screen time so that dopamine, I'm an exercise physiologist by trade, how do we reduce dopamine? Because that impacts performance. So here, I don't want to be telling your athletes, oh, you should be branding, but then it's like, well, hang on, I want to get them off their phone. Why are you doing that? So we balance that. But you'd be surprised how few people are like, teams are like looking at this. It's like, well, we just want to put all our money into performance, and this is, it feels to us like there's this lack, not accusing you guys of this, but like there's a lack of care. And I think what it is, it's not a lack of care, it's a lack of understanding, how easy this is to implement, like to give them. So it's kind of I'm always interested in what it is you guys want, what it is would be important to you. So maybe it's an offline thing, but
I would love to talk some more to you.
What is that? Yeah, because I get, it's hard when I'm dealing with athletes whose careers are over, like done. I mean, I'm talking about $40 million a year athletes, and then athletes who can't, survive without a scholarship. They don't get an education, let alone a pro sport career. So it's hard, right? And it's such an easy thing. When we've seen schools spend, I started my business when Laramie Tunsil fell on April 16th, 2016, because, that I know that school went on to spend $5 million to protect their reputation after that happened, but there was no education for him. So it's a hard thing to see happen. Yeah, but so easy, so easy to fix. So anyway,
Fiona, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think I'll just chime in there, Megan, on that last conversation.
Of course.
And I really think it's not an easy topic, and certainly what was just mentioned is around retiring athletes and looking at the wellness of athletes. And again, in Canada, we have a program called Game Plan as well. And Game Plan is, by its definition, around supporting athletes with career transition, both within sport and out of sports. And it's the Total Athlete Wellness Program here in Canada. In many situations, it's really down to the NSO to leverage a lot of these organizations, such as Game Plan, to try to bring some of those skills to the athletes and bring it to their coaches as well. So I just want to highlight a number of different programs here in Canada trying to address these issues.
Thank you. Great. Okay, well, I am officially going to wrap up this panel number 3 of the Leadership Summit of Culture and Sport. A massive thank you, Sue, Nathan, Dr. Andy, Laura. You have all been a real treat. I know that as a Canadian in this sports system, I can't thank you enough for the efforts that you're doing to continue to create safe sport practices, cultures of excellence, and leading strategic change for the better. So thank you. Folks have tuned in today to walk away with a nugget, whether that's an inspiration nugget, whether that's a learning nugget. So maybe that's how I'm going to end is, what is a suggestion that you've got for someone listening today who, thinks ambitiously about changing something within their system? What's the guidance you would give them? Laura, what's the guidance you're going to give someone?
Sue was off mute. I was hoping she was going to jump in. I mean, that's a big question. I guess the one thing, just to sum up what I've said, is find time to prioritize taking care of people and helping people do better.
Great. Sue?
Yeah, nobody cares what you know until they know you care. And, but you know, the other piece is never give up. Things change. We are better than what we used to be. Now we will continue to evolve and whatever. So never give up on making things better.
Great. The resilience.
Yeah.
Dee, what's your guidance?
You just took my word resilience, so I'll move to where I started, people and performance. Keep leaning into that algorithm. Keep trying to understand what that algorithm means to you, people and performance.
Great. Nathan, from the hotel room in Paris, what is your guidance?
I think you got to lean in, you got to ask questions, and then you got to listen to the answers. I think that can get you started.
Yeah.
Lean in, ask questions, listen to the answers is a great way to start.
Great. Okay, on behalf of Culture and Sport, thank you all. Appreciate all, and we are sending everyone off to the next panel. Continue to enjoy the day. Thank you.